Well, good evening, everyone. We have a wonderful crowd this evening. I'm so happy to see everyone. Thank you guys for joining. Just a reminder, this is being recorded so that we can put it on our YouTube channel, dailybigcat.com, so that those who aren't able to join us tonight can hear the replay. So just as a disclaimer up front. So we are so happy you're here. Tonight we have Gale as our guest, and Gale has been at Big Cat Rescue since 2003 and has done, according to her bio on our workplaces, I've done it all. So, Gale, we can't hardly wait to hear what all you've done and all your stories, because I know you've probably got tons of them. So I'm going to let Carol start, because I think she has maybe some questions she's going to ask Gale. So those of you in the audience, if you want to just hang on a minute after Gale is done talking, then if you have a question, raise your hand and we will pull you up on stage. Carol, it's all you.
So for those of you who don't know, Gale is currently our CFO, and she handles all of the banking and bookkeeping and everything for the sanctuary and for my real estate business. And so, as Gale has said, she has done just about everything, and we're going to get into an awful lot of that. But first, Gale, I want to ask you when and what made you decide to devote so much of your time to protecting big cats?
Wow. Okay. Well, I didn't really know anything about that until I actually came to Big Cat Rescue. And when I came to Big Cat Rescue and started volunteering and realized, the story behind all of how everything was being done in the background with traders and breeders and stuff like that, I knew I had to join the cause and try to make a better life for these animals in captivity, and to prevent others from having to live that kind of life.
Did you have an early fascination with big cats or domestic cats or any particular type of animal?
I've always loved animals in general. I never really had a particular... I either had a puppy or a cat or something when I was younger. More cats than dogs, but I've always, when I was able, and yet when I was younger, and even as I, was an adult, I always had a pet of some kind, from birds to hamsters to cats to dogs. So I've always had animals in my life in some shape or form.
When and how did you hear about Big Cat Rescue?
Well, actually, you're going to have to thank Jen Ruzick for that. I moved to Tampa in 2002 and was looking for a job, and I happened to interview for the accounting manager job at the company she worked at. And after I started working there, she came around one day with these flyers that you guys, I think, way back then you called it Family Day, because I guess way back when kids under 10 weren't allowed at all. And on this particular day, it was similar to our walkabout that we have now, except you called it Family Day, and we still went out in groups instead of everybody just walked around, but you could bring your younger kids, and she was handing out flyers. And so I said, well, that sounds really interesting. I'll come. So I came that Saturday and did the tour. And back then, the gift shop was in that little bitty trailer that we just tore down in the parking lot. And if you came in sandals, you had to buy socks to put on your feet. Because at that point in time, we still were doing the interaction with some of the smaller cats, and you couldn't go in with bare feet. So you had to put socks on. Fortunately, I came in tennis shoes, so I didn't have to buy socks to wear. But I did the tour and was very impressed. And ironically, that very same day at 2:00 in the afternoon was your volunteer. If interview process if you wanted to volunteer. It was that day at 2:00, so I stayed and did the volunteer orientation and started volunteering the very next day, and here I am.
So did you actually go to work with Jen?
Yes, she worked in the sales department, and I worked in the accounting department of the same company. That's how I found out about Big Cat Rescue.
I did not remember that about you. I thought you were working as an accountant for a dentist.
Well, but that is when I came, you're right, but that's when I actually came and started to be staff at Big Cat. But just as starting out in 2003 as a volunteer, I was working with, at the same company Jen Resnick was working at.
Oh, wow. And as a volunteer, since you started in 2002, are there ways that volunteering was different then than it is now?
Yeah, it somewhat. I mean, the process for like cleaning cats and feeding cats and that type of process is the same. Probably now more so that it's a buddy system kind of thing, because you would go out with a trainer just like you do now, but we had over 150 animals at that point in time. And so it took a lot longer to clean the cages. I mean, we would be out cleaning and double checking, till, noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, depending on how many volunteers we had on any given day. But the process and the procedures and the policies, have been tweaked a little bit over the years, but they were good basic policies. So they haven't changed a whole lot.
And what level of shirt level had you reached before you became staff?
Well, let's see. I started out obviously as a red shirt in 2003, and I made it to a green, and then I took a short, like a 6-month sabbatical. And when I came back at that point in time, there wasn't like, if you came within 6 months, you could just do a reassessment and continue on at your same level. So I had to start over again as a red shirt. And so I started again as a red shirt, and that was in 2007, worked my way back up to be a green shirt. And then, you came to me, I believe I want to say October or November of 2009, and approached me about the operations job, because at that time, I guess Scott had at least given his notice, and so you were trying to decide. And I'll never forget how you approached me, because back then it was like, I don't remember, we just finished cleaning or something, and I was walking from somewhere to food prep, and we were up near food prep, and you just out of the blue walked over to me and said, "Hey, how would you like to be operations manager? Scott is leaving." And I just stood there, like, I think with this dumb look on my face, like, what? And, I said, well, I would be interested in hearing more about the job. And you said, okay, well, I'll send you the job description. And you did. You emailed it to me, and it was like 30 pages long. And I was like, I got the document. I went, 30? Oh, my God, 30 pages long. So, but, I still accepted the job. But I had to give notice, obviously, at the job I was working at. And unfortunately, my poor boss that I was working at, when I told my CFO, before I actually told the dentist that I was working for, I told my CFO, and I said, just keep that to yourself, because I do want to tell him, but I just wanted you to be aware that this is what's happening. And so when I gave my notice, I went to meet with him and my CFO, and I told him, and he knew already that I volunteered at Big Cat, and that was a big part of my life, and it was a passion that I wanted to pursue. And so when I told him I was turning in my notice that I'd been offered a job at Big Cat, he's like, that is just not fair. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I can't even offer you more money because you're quitting to take a job where you get paid less. So I can't even bribe you with money to get you to stay. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is something I want to do. And so I'm going to go do it. And he's like, well, okay. So.
When our operations manager left to pursue a film career on Animal Planet, I asked my dad who he thought would be a good replacement candidate. And he said that you were already doing all of the work by yourself, so that I should ask you. And so that's how that came to be, that I went over and said, hey, you want to be operations manager?
And it's funny because you didn't actually tell me that. I think I was operations for, I don't know, I think it was later in my first year. And I don't know how many of you ever met or really knew Vern, but Vern was, a wonderful man, but he had a way about him. And you never really knew when he was talking to you when he would say something, if he was serious or if he was kidding. And so when I got to be operations and we started to kind of work together a little bit, we didn't really understand how each other, communicated. And he would be, telling me about something, and I, being the person that I am, and the personality that I am, I always had questions. And he took that not in me wanting to learn and understand and pick his brain. And Carol came to me one day and she said, you've got to stop upsetting my dad. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And you said, well, he thinks you're being, hard to work with. And I'm like, oh okay. I don't understand why, but okay. So I started avoiding Vern. I would see him coming around the corner and I would try to go the other way because you didn't want to upset Vern, and I didn't want Vern to be upset with me. But we worked through it, and, we got to where we could understand each other, and, and we worked together a lot, and I learned a lot about how to put cages together and all of that. And I remember Chuck and Vern and I were working on where Jasmine is now when we were putting up that big cage, and they were having to dig like a little trench to put the cage wire down in. And I had some time, and I said, well, I'll come help you break the dirt up and dig this trench. And him and Chuck would sit down to take a break, and I just kept going and going and going. And he's like, you're just making me tired watching you. You've got to sit down and take a break.
Well, that is what impressed both of us so much about you, is how hardworking you are and how you'll jump right in and do whatever needs doing. And can you talk a little bit about how it is that you do that? Because I don't think that's normal for most people to just see a problem and jump in and take care of it.
I don't know. I mean, it's just, that's one thing that people have always told me, is that I have a good work ethic. There are people that can take a job that will really, if you just got down to it and did it, you could do it in an hour. And there are people that will take that hour job and make it last all day long. And I have just never been that kind of person. If this job only takes an hour, well, I'll get it done in 45 minutes. And then that gives me 15 minutes to find something else to do.
I think part of the problem between you and my father was just communication skills are different. And you and I are both Enneagram 8s, which means we are really direct and we say what's on our mind. And a lot of times people don't understand that because we're like all business and lack social skills. But I know when you were the operations manager, you had a group called Gale's Army. So can you talk a little bit about how you built those relationships with volunteers and with interns despite being their boss and being really direct?
Well, I think the volunteers and interns that took a minute to really get to know me and to understand that when I said, when I would say, when I would be direct, it wasn't that I was trying to be mean or anything like that. And it's funny because I remember that particular summer, I think we had like 25 interns. And everybody was like, they would say, well, this intern looks like this, that, and the other. And I'd be like, well, that's so-and-so. And they'd go, well, you got 25 interns. How do you remember their names? And I'm like, because that's my job. They work for me. I need to know who they are and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And, and I would just try to work with that. And I always tried to make sure that, you can tell someone to go do a job and they'll go do it. But unless you give them, I feel like unless you set an example for, well, Carol, I have very high expectations of how things should be done. And so when I would explain how I wanted something done, that's how I wanted it done. And if I sent you to do the task knowing that you had the skills to do it, and I went to check on you and you weren't doing it the way I told you that I needed it done, then you had to undo it and do it the way I told you to do it. And sometimes they would get frustrated, and I say, well, let me explain to you why I need you to do it this way. Because obviously you were going to do it your way because you thought you knew better, but let me explain. And so I found that even though I was direct and had kind of what maybe a lot of people thought was a harsh way about me, if I took a minute to explain to someone why I wanted something done a particular way and the reasoning behind it and the safety behind it and that kind of stuff, especially when it came to doing repairs on cages or even feeding the cats and stuff. I was very particular when I was training someone to feed. It's like, there's a reason you do it this way with this cat and a reason you do it this way with this cat, because sometimes the cats will, even though you're dropping it from the tops, the cats will jump up and they'll bat at the meat, and then you've got meat slung everywhere. So there was always a reason why I told you it needed to be done a certain way. And sometimes you just had to stop for a second and explain why. And it seemed to work. And I always made sure that back then, like you say, we had 25 interns, but there was still a lot of cats and there was a lot to do. And in order to get that done, you had to do some hard work, but then have some good time. So I tried to plan at least once a week an activity that I could do with the interns that would be fun. Like we would go out and do paw castings, or we would do paw painting as a reward for really like, okay, if you guys work really hard and get this project done on Friday, we'll go do this. We'll take a few hours, we'll go have some cat time, and we'll go get paw paintings. You guys pick a cat. And I think it showed in how they all reacted to me. Even though now some of them are volunteers, they tell me, oh, everybody was always so afraid of you, because they say you would yell. And I'm like, did I ever really truly yell at anybody? And they said, no, you never really actually yelled, but you were very direct. And so that was, Gale yelled at me. And they're like, but did she really yell at you, or did you do something wrong? And she was telling you why you did something wrong. And they were all, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay, see, I never really yelled. And they said, and besides, it's not really the yelling, Gale, that you have to worry about. It's when she gets really quiet and just ignores you, because that's when you've really messed up and she's trying to figure out how to tell you that you messed up. And she's really upset.
You mentioned there was 25 interns, but in addition to that, you were also in charge of anywhere from 80 to 110 volunteers at any given time. And all of those people are working every day out there for free. So the kinds of things that you're mentioning there are the ways that you got people to show up and do their jobs all for free, which is, it's hard enough to do when you're paying people well. It's really hard when they're not getting paid.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's the one thing, like you say, you have to realize that volunteers come because they want to work with animals, but they also come, which was the hardest part for me, because when I came, my focus was the animals. I'm here because I want to do what needs to be done for the animals. And that's why I was always out doing something, because that's why I was here. But a lot of people come because they want to help the animals, but they also come for the social aspect of it, to meet new people and to, make new friendships and stuff like that. Where for me, the primary goal was to do whatever I could to help the sanctuary and help the animals and that. And if I made friends in the process, well, that was all well and good, but that's not why I was here. And sometimes I struggled with that, because it would be like we'd be shorthanded and we would all be out cleaning, and I would see some volunteers standing around leaning on their scraper poles chatting. And the first thing my mind goes to is, why are you standing there chatting when we have 150 animals to take care of and there's only 10 of us to do this today? Stop talking and go work. So, once I figured out that it's still going to get done, and I just have to, be patient, that's the process that they have to work through, because that's part of the reason that they're here also, is for the friendship and the other volunteers and stuff. And that was the most struggle for me, I think, was realizing that there's always a secondary reason. For me, there was never really a secondary reason. It was always about the sanctuary and the cats.
And for 20 years, my mother handled all of the bookkeeping for the sanctuary and for my real estate business, but she retired in 2018 and 2017. And then she worked with you, I guess, for a year to get you up to speed with what we were doing. Was that the case? Am I missing this? I didn't think she left until 2018.
I took over the position, and I remember, because as it happens to be the exact same month my father passed away. Oh. So it's etched in my mind, because a lot happened that month. My dad got sick, and first I took over the job in August of 2017, and so I was dealing with my dad in the hospital dying, a new job, moving house, trying to get Catherine up to speed on, what was going on, because she took over operations. And so that month was like a really, that month was a struggle. But yeah, so she spent like a month or two I already had an accounting background, so I really didn't need her to explain to me how the bookkeeping aspect of it went. I just needed to know the particulars about your particular business and certain aspects of it. And so I took over pretty much immediately. And then I worked with Howard Howard worked with me a little bit on some intricate things. And then your mom was always like, if something came up that I didn't really understand about like a particular thing, then I could call her. And so she was always available for like the first 6 months or so if I had a question about something or just needed to clarify something.
So can you tell people what it is you do currently for the sanctuary and for me?
Well, currently I do all of the bookkeeping for Wildcats on Wings and Big Cat Rescue. And I manage all the rental properties for Big Cat Rescue and Wildcats on Wings. Plus, I take care of all of your personal stuff for rentals and
balancing my checkbook.
Yeah. So I do all the bookkeeping for Carol and Wildcats on Wings and Big Cat Rescue. So I do all of the accounting and the financials for Big Cat. And then I work with the accountant at the end of the year to do the audit and all of that. And then I work, with Howard.
And, you're summing that up really concisely, but oh my gosh, it's such a huge breadth of work that you do.
Well, let me put it this way. I've started putting an accounting manual together, and I'm only about maybe 60% done, and it's already filled a 3-inch binder.
And you made fun of me with my 30-page job description.
I know. But there's just so many, there's so many little things that are just, you have to, it's not complicated, but if you don't know that you need to do it, then, so it's like you need to know that you need to do this on a particular day at a particular time, and you got to do it a certain way. And, there's just a lot of, and I have streamlined a lot of processes, and put a lot of stuff, I do a lot of stuff electronically now that Barbara did paper-wise, and I do it all electronically because I'm trying to cut down on paper. So
you've made some huge advances in that department.
Oh yeah, like I say, we used to outsource our payroll, and now it's all done electronically. So, and I handle all of it. So it's, everything is, you gotta move with the times.
Well, thank you, Gale. I'm going to hand off questions to Deb and Karen, and then they'll call people up on stage to ask you more questions.
Okay.
Gale, as you were talking about Gale's Army and about the interns, something came to my mind that, of course, I've watched the lives since I first found the sanctuary back in 2017, but this was actually an older one, and you'll probably remember this when you hear it. But Carol was talking to you in the live, and somehow the interns came up, and you said, "Yes, I sent them back home. We don't have interns today because I sent them back home because their house wasn't clean enough."
Yeah, that's probably very true, because we used to, when I was operations, Chelsea and I would switch off doing house inspections because, when you've got, we had 5 each in the Himalayan and Moglen, and then we had 7 in the Sandcat, and then we had a bunch here, there, and everywhere. And so when you got 25 different people all living together, it's like you've got one person that is a really clean, person, and another one's kind of like, I'll wash that dish later. You can't really let that happen. And so we would do weekly inspections. And if their house wasn't clean too, and again, my expectations are really high. And I had, it's like Carol kept saying, you need to really regulate your expectations a little bit. I'm like, oh, well, all right. But yeah, if their house wasn't clean, it was like, nope, go home and clean it. I don't care how you guys get it done, but your house has to be clean. I don't want to have to be able to eat off the floors, but the floors do need to be swept and mopped.
I'll never forget that because I was so afraid of you at that time. It's like, oh my gosh, this woman scares me to death.
Well, it's funny. I heard that a lot from volunteers that used to be interns that are now volunteers or staff members, and they say, all of the interns were just terrified of you. And I'm like, I don't understand why everybody was so afraid of me. I wasn't mean, I was direct, but I was never really mean. But it's like if you were doing something wrong, I wasn't shy about saying that you can't do that, and here's, this is why, and you can't do that. But I got to tell you, I was never so moved as the year Jamie had a big Halloween party at her house, and it was always a surprise what the interns were going to dress up as. And they would never tell us. We always had to guess, or wait and see. And that particular year, they came to the Halloween party in their intern shirts, and they were like ripped, and they were like had red paint on them and all of this stuff. And they all had signs. And each sign said something different, and they were basically I'm not going to say the word emulating. Anyway, because it was, my thing was, say for like operant, I would always say, you're not giving them a meal, you're giving them a snack. And so all of their signs said, Gale said, it's not a meal, it's a snack. And then they would have like fake scratches on their arm and a broken operant stick, or, and there's pictures of it. I have pictures of it somewhere because I will never forget. I got a group picture of all of the interns in their intern shirts with all their little signs that said, Gale said, and something like, not running, and just how, be careful when you feed, and, all that. And it was, all of them had these signs. And I was like, whereas it's like some people could have taken that as like, oh, they're making fun of you because you're so, you're so bossy or mean or whatever. And I took that to mean what I was saying to them obviously was making an impression because they remembered it.
I agree. Yep. That says a lot about you for them to have done that too. So 2 other questions. One is, we have someone who's usually here in the audience who couldn't be here tonight, and he asked me to ask you, who is your favorite Savannah cat?
Well, I have to say, assuming that he's actually a Savannah, because I don't know, he doesn't look like a Savannah cat, but it would have to be Tut. And I guess because Tut came when I was still operations, and he's just had so many issues over the years, and so I've worked one-on-one with him a lot when he's been sick and in the hospital, and you would have to shift him from one side of the cage to the other, and he really wasn't physically able to like really move that well by himself, so we'd have to pick him up in a blanket and move him to the other side, and it was always refreshing when you would come in and you would try to get him to shift, and he would actually like hiss at you or something. It's like, oh, you're feeling better today, yay! Because normally I, could just move him and he wouldn't, put up a fuss or anything. But when he started like actually putting up a fuss every day when I would go in to like change his bedding and feed him and stuff, and he would hiss at me, I would be like, yay, you're feeling better today. And so I guess, I just kind of, with having to work with him so much, with him being so sick all those years, that he kind of is, one of my favorites in the hybrid department.
And the other question that I like to ask people, our guests, is, tell us about your pets at home.
Well, all of my cats that I have were feral, or they were wild caught. I had 4 siblings. That there was a mama cat over at my dad's house when I lived there, and when I first moved to Tampa. And I think she must have been somebody's pet, because she was friendly enough, but then she got pregnant, and well, when I first saw her, she was pregnant, and I found her. So I knew soon that she was going to have her babies, and then one day she was really skinny, and I searched my yard everywhere I could think of, and I found the kittens. She had the kittens under my grandfather's old car out behind the barn, and so I dug those kittens out and grabbed them with those, those when you're not tall enough and you have the little grippy handle thing to get stuff off a high shelf. I pulled those kittens out from underneath there with one of those grippy things because she was too far under, I couldn't reach. So I still have I have those 4. And then although this last year I lost Orient to liver cancer, so I lost her. But then Fifi, my one old girl, she's like 13 or 14. She was also a little feral kitten that had been caught and was brought into the vet clinic where I was working at the time when I was a volunteer the first time. And she had all kinds. She was a teeny tiny little kitten, and she had all kinds of respiratory issues and everything, and it was in isolation for months before we could let her back out and try to start socializing her. So I spent a lot of time with her at the vet clinic, but I already had a cat, Ebony, and then I already had the 4, so there was no way I could take on another kitten. But during the time we were there, we were socializing her, and apparently I must have got pretty attached to her because the very first day we put her out in the lobby to show she was available for adoption. A woman with 2 kids came in with a kitten, and the kitten had scabies. And so we went through the whole process, and we told, the woman, you got to go home and wash everything that this kitten has been in touch with, disinfect it. And when you leave this room, you and your kids have to go straight out. Don't touch anything. Anything. And the minute those kids, they were young, they walked out the door, they went right straight over to that cage and started to, go to touch her. And I about had a conniption fit. And Carol, how you could see me. If you imagine, I ran over to that cage, snatched that kitten out of that cage and said, absolutely not. You're not touching this kitten. And I took the kitten
no doubt,
put her in a cage, and told Dr. Boston, I said, I'm taking that kitten home. She's mine. And she went, what? Are you sure? And I'm like, yep, nope, she's mine. I'm taking her. And so she came to live with me. And then the one my little furry black panther that I have, Marceline, was one of our interns that stayed to be a volunteer, found 2 cats that were about 6 months old. And she brought them to the sanctuary for the interns to socialize them and so we could get them, fixed and adopted. And the one intern, I believe his name was Philip, had those 2 in his room, and he was trying really hard. And the one kitten was just as nice and pleasant and loved everybody, but he kept saying, Gale, I just don't know this one kitten. They named her Marcelina, just doesn't want anything to do with anybody. And I'm like, okay, well, this afternoon when we're all done, I'll come check it out. And so I went in the room and opened the door, and he was in the window, and pulled the screen back and pulled the curtain back, and he ran into the carrier. And so I went over and I looked in the carrier, and here was this beautiful, long-haired, solid black kitten with green eyes staring out at me, just terrified. I shut the door, I grabbed the carrier, I said, I'm going to take this cat. and socialize him. And he's like, well, but I'm like, nope, I'm taking it. I'm taking the cat. I'm going to socialize it. My first cat, Ebony, was a long-haired black, and he reminded me so much of him. And I had lost him back in, I think, 2015. And I said, no, I need to do this. I need to socialize this cat. So I took him home, put him in a cage in my living room, and he was very wild. And I took the welding gloves that we used for the rehabs, and I stuck the scratcher into the glove, and I would use the scratcher and the glove every day, twice a day. I would take that glove and I would pet him. And he tolerated the food and the litter changes and everything. He did not like the being touched. But that cat loves me. And when it came time to give him up, I was like, no, I think I'm going to keep him too. So he's still skittish, but he is like the best cat, and he tolerates so much from me because I'll just snatch him up and hug on him and kiss on him, and he's like, oh, when are you going to be done? And then he'll go run away, but then a little bit later, he's up in my face like, okay, maybe a little more.
And then you have some rehab squirrels right now too, right?
I do. I have Gibbs and Ziva right now. They're interesting because I had the 3 little girl squirrels last year, and it's just amazing the difference in the personalities between how the squirrels work. Because the 3 little girls were just like, they were so easy. They just, they ate well, and they tolerated me cleaning the cages, and they would run all over me and all over the cage, and they behaved. And these 2 I have a little boy, and man, he is all little boy, man. He stomps and grunts at me, and he reminds me of Cam and Zabu, because Zabu would come over and want to rub on the fence and talk to you and visit with you, and Cameron would be like, no, get away from them, and he would get between her and the fence and push her away. And that's what Gibbs does to Ziva, because Ziva wants to come and socialize with me, and Gibbs is like, no, get away, human's not good. So these 2 have been interesting pair to rehab.
You sound like you have your hands full.
Yeah, but they're fun.
Karen, did you have a question before we pass it on?
I do. I'm Gale, I don't know if you remember meeting me, but we've met a couple times. I do the main Facebook page. What I do is I volunteer, and I coordinate a team that keeps the Facebook page clean of any negative comments or questions that people have. We try to answer, and I try to educate. And there's a team of us that do so, and I coordinate that team. But
yes, I remember you.
Okay, because the last time I was there, you were still operations manager, I think. So it was quite a while ago, so that's why I wasn't sure if you remembered. But my question is, because when I started following way back, you were in all the videos all the time. And then all of a sudden you weren't in the videos anymore. And I kept thinking, where's that Gale person? I don't see her anymore. And so then when I saw you, I asked the keeper, so what's going on with Gale? And then she told me. I wasn't as involved then as I am now. So my question is, and that day I think you had a particularly hard day, and you were just sitting with one of the cats. And so I think of it once in a while. You must miss them, and that's my question. Do you miss being on the property all the time? I mean, going from that, being in all those videos where you were hands-on and moving cats and giving orders and being with those people nonstop, day in and day out. Accounting sounds an awful lot different than that. So, I mean, that's quite opposite. So,
yes, it is.
Yeah. So, do you miss it? And sometimes do you just take a walk to see your friends, the cats? How is that?
Well, I mean, I live on property, and so I have to go up to the gift shop at least once a day. But sometimes I'll just get tired of staring at a computer or whatever, and I'll get on the golf cart and I'll take a ride. Or so if I've gone up to the gift shop, sometimes I'll take like the long way around so that I can and I'll stop, and if there's a cat out that's that not all of the new cats really know who I am because I'm not really involved in their care, but some of the ones that I helped rescue that are still here, they remember me, and they're, like I stop by and see Nikki, and, I always say hi to, even though I wasn't there, I didn't rescue Aria. She's a fairly, chatty cat and will, come over and, chuck at you. So I tried to stop by and say hi to anybody that's there that I see. I'll say hi to them. They all look at me like, who are you? You don't feed me. You don't give me treats. You don't, what are you doing here? But yeah, sometimes I just ride through just to, kind of have a little cat time.
Thank you. I always wondered because you seem to have such a way with them, and having a vastly different job now, you could miss that end of it. But it does seem like you have enough critters at home to hang out with too. So thank you very much.
Hi, Nancy. Did you have a question or a comment for Gale?
Yes. Hi, Gale. I'm enjoying the conversation about communication and expectations. There were a lot of recognition laughs on this end. I think I learned a lot from you that will help me personally. But I wanted to ask, what is your favorite rescue? What your most memorable rescue, and why?
Oh, the most memorable rescue. Well, I think they're all memorable. But I think I have to say...
It's got to be our trip to Niagara Falls, right?
Well, that was, our favorite saying, anybody without a gun, please help us push this cage. That was, but no, honestly, I think it was the first rescue that I ever went on. It was just Jamie and Chris and I, and that's when we went up to, I think it was Illinois, to Elizabethtown to get Freddie and Sassy, because I remember we drove up there, and we drove like straight through. We didn't stop on the way. We just drove straight up, and the directions gave us this little road, and we're like, it's after dark, and we don't really know where we're at. We're in this dark road. There's no houses or whatever, and it's this little small country road, and it's really dark, and we're all going, are we sure this is the right road? Are we sure we're on the right road? And Jamie's like, well, this is what the map says, so I'm assuming yes. And so we're just driving along, and all of a sudden I'm like, I think I see some lights down there and a stop sign. And so we get to the stop sign. I think Chris was driving. We get to the stop sign, and we all look at each other, and we're going, okay, wow. Good thing we weren't, flying down this road, or, because basically we had to cross the Ohio River, and the road ended at the river, and we had to wait for the ferry to pull across the river and lower the ramp, and we drove onto the ferry, and then it took us across the Ohio River and dropped us off in Elizabethtown. And we're all sitting in the van going, okay, this is interesting, because it was like just out of the blue, and it reminds me of those old stories where they talk about, putting the horses and everything on these ferries, and you pull on a rope and it pulls the ferry across the river. That's kind of what it was. And it's like I said, I'll never forget that. And it was just an amazing, and plus just the rescue in general of going up and getting those two cougars. But all of the rescues I got to go on were somehow eventful. I don't think we had any rescue that was just easy peasy. There was always something that happened at every single one.
Leslie, did you have a question or a comment for Gale?
Yes, Gale, it's obvious that everyone at Big Cat Rescue who works there or lives there has seen how much you do, but I think that folks who see you on YouTube or whatever love you too, and we have seen what you have done for Big Cat Rescue as well. So back in 2017, we sent you a package, a thank you box for all the work that you've done. And in that package was a bunch of envelopes with some money. So my question is actually this: what kind of fabulous things did you do for yourself with that money?
I remember the package because I think it came and Afton hid it from me because you guys wanted to see me opening it on film. And so we had to wait until I was actually in my office and she had her camera. And I remember her and Catherine bringing the package in. Catherine brought the package and Afton had her video camera. And she's like, so all your fans sent you this package and they want you to open it on the camera. And I don't remember exactly everything that was in it. I do remember everything came in this white bag with black flowers on it. And I gotta tell you, up until like a month ago, I used that bag every single day.
And she complained about the fact that she was not going to be able to use the bag anymore because she totally wore it out to me just recently.
Yeah, I love that bag, and like I say, I did. I wore it down to where there were holes in it because I used it every single day to go back and forth to get mail and anything I was toting around. I used that bag all the time, like I say, until just recently I had to go get a new bag because I wore that one out. But I don't remember exactly. I remember there were some gift cards in there, but I thought they were, quite honestly, I probably spent it on stuff for the sanctuary because that's kind of
We actually had sent that to you for your golf cart. And when you received the box, you let us know that you were no longer working on the grounds. You were going to be in your office.
Right.
So, yeah, and then we also sent you a water bottle with the most extraordinary picture of you on it.
Yes, I actually still have that water bottle. It was an odd picture that I think one of you guys had like just pulled off of one of because I'm making this funny face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very funny face.
Yep, I still have that water bottle. And like I say, and up until just a couple of months ago, I was still using that bag.
Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for the gift back then.
Yes, you're welcome.
Hi, Paula. Did you have a question or comment for Gale?
Hi, Gale. God, I really enjoyed hearing you tonight. I just did not want to miss this when I heard that Gale was going to be the guest tonight. Even though I can watch them afterwards, I wanted to be here for it.
Well, good.
A couple things. First of all, I just remember a funny thing. Back when I discovered BCR in 2017, also, you were on a lot of the walkabouts, and I miss seeing you on the walkabouts. I love seeing you. I could relate to many of your personality traits, especially in the workforce as you were talking. But I remember a video, and I think it was Chris Poole that put it out, something about 7 ways or 10 ways you know a big cat keeper. And one of the things that he showed, one of them was really funny, talking about poop at mealtime, of course, cat poop at mealtime. But one was, you were announcing that you were leaving the property, and all the interns were like, oh, big sigh of relief. They all laid down on the floor and started rusting. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
But,
that was, yeah, that
remember
was,
that?
yeah.
But the question I had, and kind of Karen got to a little bit, you are not working with animals at all anymore. I wondered if you were still a keeper, if you were still maintaining your volunteer hours or anything like that.
No, I stay pretty busy with the property management stuff and the bookkeeping. Like I say, I have a huge caseload myself with stuff, but I do still do some rehab stuff. Like I'm rehabbing a couple of squirrels right now, but I'm not active in the volunteer program right now.
Thank you. And one other thing I remember just came to me. I remember Carol saying to you once, and I think this was when you were going to go out on a rescue, a last minute call on a bobcat, where she had called you to join her. And I remember Carol saying, Gale never says no. So,
well, this is true.
So I think
that's one thing, like I say, it has always been my thing, is like, I always offer my help. If it's needed, I'm always there. But that's just who I am. If somebody needs help, I'm there.
You're quite an asset to the sanctuary, it seems to me. I mean, you've progressed through the years, and I don't know what they would do without you. So thanks for being here. It was great to hear you.
Thanks.
Hi, Lonnie. Did you have a question or comment for Gale?
Yeah. Hi, Gale. It's been a pleasure listening to your history with Big Cat Rescue, and I just had a simple question. I don't know what Wildcats on Wings is.
It's one of our property management companies.
Oh, I see. I thought it was a foundation or something like that.
No, it's a property one of the property managements for the rental properties.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for being here and telling all your stories. Very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Bella. Did you have a question or comment for Gale?
Yes, I did. Hi, Gale. Thank you, no matter from the beginning to the end, for caring and taking care of the cats. Watching you in videos and seeing the love, the joy, and everything you gave, it's always touching. My question is, with you working with Zeus, was there any memories or something? Because he brought me to Big Cat Rescue, and I've loved him ever since, and I still do. Is there a good story you could tell about him?
Oh, Zeus. Zeus was, we had to do eye drops with Zeus because of he was blind in that one eye. And just figuring out how to get him to let us do the eye drops, trying to figure out the best way to, get him to turn his head, which way to put the meat in so he will turn his head so that the eye was up so we could drop drops in from the top of the cage without actually having to put our hands in. And so that was interesting, learning how to do that, because then turns out it came in handy because at some point in time we had to do it with Joseph. So that was a good learning experience because he was more amenable to doing what you wanted to do, whereas Joseph was not so much. He was a little bit more ornery. But let's see what else. He loved to be brushed. I had this really long stick, and on the end of this stick, this stick was like 4 feet long, and on the end of it I had like I don't know if any of you have horses, but it was like a shedding comb where you comb, like where they would groom horses to pull the shedded hair out. And he loved to be brushed, and I would brush him with this shedding comb, and he just would sit there and just let me brush him. He loved to be brushed.
Okay, thank you very much, Gale.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Luana. Did you have a question or comment for Gale?
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate Gale. Gale always has an answer, no matter what your question is, and it's always a quick, to the point answer that's easy to understand. leaves no room for misunderstanding. I appreciate Gale, and from having worked in the online department for so many years, I can tell you what, Gale is one of the most popular people at BCR, even though she's kind of been out of the live videos and stuff for quite a while now. I cannot tell you how many times on a regular basis people are asking, where's Gale? Is Gale still there? I never see Gale. I miss that lady with the crazy socks. I can't remember her name, but is she still there? Will you tell that lady with the crazy socks how much we miss her? So, and I've learned a lot from Gale, and I tell you what, I really envy her organizational skills. Much love to you, Gale.
All right, thanks, Luana.
Hi, CJ. Did you have a question or comment for Gale?
Hi there. Yes, I do. First of all, Gale, it's so nice to hear you again. I'm one of those people that misses seeing you on video all the time. Well, I'm glad I ended up last, because my question is there any job left that you haven't done other than figure out how to look like Carol so you can do her interviews?
Yeah, I don't want to do Carol or Jamie's jobs. Well, I don't want to do Jamie's job as far as all of the background stuff that she does. I still would love to be able to do like the hospital stuff, because I really did like when we had to do procedures and catch cats and stuff like that. I really did like that, so I would definitely do that. But I don't want Carol's job. I don't even want to have to do it for a day to fill in.
But if there's anybody who could do my job, I think it would be you, because of the fact that our personalities are so similar, and you'll tell people exactly what's on your mind, and I think that's important. So
yeah, well, I know, but you and I both know that you can't always do that. Sometimes you have to bite your tongue.
Which is why I have Deb and Luana and Karen and CJ and all of those to run interference for me, so that I'm not saying things they shouldn't. Well, how about everybody open up your mic and give a big woo-hoo and thank you to Gale, because she was absolutely awesome, and we almost got this done at 7 o'clock, which really shocks me. Thank you, Gale. Love you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gale.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. And next week, we have a very special guest. Carol, do you want to talk about our guest next week?
Who's our guest next week?
This is why you have me around.
It is.
Deb, I was just going to say that too, definitely.
Jeff Kramer.
Jeff Kramer worked at Big Cat Rescue as our Director of Donor Appreciation, and now he's retired, but he has been a huge help with us and with the conservation game and with our federal bill. He's usually working behind the scenes, and he's just an unsung hero for so many people. They don't know how much work he does still do for the animals, so I can't wait to have him on the show and have everybody get to know Jeff.
I tell you what, I urge everybody to pass out the word that Jeff Kramer is going to be on ClubHouse next week. I guarantee you, whatever Jeff has to say, you don't want to miss it. So put it out there in Facebook groups, put it out there in text, send message reminders to your friends to be here next week. You won't want to miss it.
Yay.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and hopefully we will see you all next week at 6 o'clock on Saturday night.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.